let's start about a one that we all have about gear. When you have photographers specifically that bring their gear, and sometimes they ask, sometimes they don't, but they just dump their gear behind your system or off to the side of your system. How do you deal with that to keep that from happening and making it look like your area and space is dumpy?
Dan, you want to start?
Sure. So one of the things that I did a few years ago, before I had the rolling booth, is I had a table, and I would actually purposely not put stuff under my table, so that with the scrim and the skirting, I guess, on the table, what it made it kind of nice was that it gave them a spot that they could tuck it away in. They had a bag, it was there. It also then kept it out of sight, because to be honest with you, for a majority of our vendors that do this, it's not that they're trying to be lazy, as some people tend to think, or that they're trying to make our area look bad because they want to look better, anything like that.
Right.
But they need to have it someplace where it's easily accessible, and to where that it's, for lack of better terms, kind of watched over. Like, not that we have to look at it, but because we're standing there, right? We're not going to go, like, we might run to the bathroom, but we're not going to like run away for 20 minutes and then come back. Like, so somebody's usually relatively near their gear at all times. So that's one of the things we have to think about, is that's why they're doing it. So giving them a spot like under a table was one of the things that I used to do. Now that I have the rolling booth, it just kind of depends upon how much equipment that I have. But one of the things that's kind of nice, for lack of better terms, is the fact that this is a bigger unit. So when they do put stuff behind me, I kind of say, hey, if you kind of put it here, like it's really only visible from like a corner, from one spot or another. So it's not like straight on. It's not going to be one of those things where, Aunt Joe decides to take a video of the first dance. They're going to see all this junk sitting behind. No, they're going to see my stuff, and their bags are going to be hopefully tucked in neater as I try and help them with that.
Sure.
I have to agree with Dan. I love to play well with others. I have no problem with them putting their stuff behind me. They just pack it there nicely. A lot of my photographers aren't carrying like a large amount of gear, so it's literally just a bag or two. Or backpack, and a lot of times they're strapped on with the cameras. So yeah, I have no problem. It helps with referrals. Not being that DJ or that guy or a vendor to be hard to get along with. I just make sure it's out of the way, tucked out of the way. I obviously think the guests can tell what a photography bag is versus what DJ equipment is. They're not going to hold that against me. And here in the Midwest where I live, I don't know. I've never lost an event because somebody saw a camera bag behind my visible.
Sure.
I think still on performance and mixing and hosting, and and aesthetics are nice. I have a Danny Mac stand and tube lights and stairs, and then so. Like I said, it doesn't affect my setup one bit. I love to play well with others, and I also make it referrals within my photography market and getting those pictures that I need for marketing and things of that nature. So I'm off. I mean, we work well together, and I think it works well. It's what I do.
One of the things we've forgotten, and Cubby, you kind of hit on it, like the size of the equipment, I think, has gotten smaller for a lot of our photographers. Like, as far as the bags that they needed to carry, used to be they would have to carry like 20 lenses. Well, now, maybe they're carrying 4. So it's, one smaller bag versus the huge bag before. So I think that's one thing that's kind of helped. Like, if you're working with maybe an old school photographer that's still using some of that other equipment, you're going to have a little bit, maybe more difficulty hiding it. But I think it still works. John, how about you?
So what I've had a couple of experiences where they just put their stuff and there's nothing we could do about it because I wasn't as prepared as I used to be. Because I used to have a couple of tables with me, and I would set the back table up. This is after CDs, it wasn't that, but I would have the back table up there, and that's where I would put my ice water and putting things back there because my front table was so small as far as what it was using at the time was just the size of the case, the controller case. So I would have that, and then they could tuck things under there. And I had stopped doing that, goodness gracious, 4 years ago? Somewhere in that ballpark, and I quit having that second table with me. And after you talked about that, Dan, it's like, gosh, maybe I need to go back to having that accessible because I could have it as their workstation, but have it skirted so that things could be tucked below, and then they could come in and they could put their cameras on top and do whatever they're going to do. Man, that's actually may not be a bad way to play nice with others and be prepared to, make it look nice in a professional space and do both.
I would probably, if I was to go that route, if I'm going to be carrying something, I would probably just bring out a facade. Put a facade that's going to be behind you, that can be tucked in behind you. Like there's a lot of the ones that you're seeing, some of the very upscale DJs right now, they're front and center, and like their whole sound console is behind them, right? With the exception of the controller or turntables or whatever they're using, like all the nuts and bolts are behind them. I think having a facade behind you as opposed to that table, because what I could end up seeing is that workstation becomes just that and looking like a workstation. Like I've had a couple that have done that where they've even like sat down on the floor and pulled out their computer and started like doing some editing on the fly. And I could see more of that happening if you had that large table. So I would look for something to use to hide, maybe even just a tabletop facade, but on the floor.
Sure.
So it's a little bit shorter, not taking up as much space. Also for your travel pieces.
Interesting thoughts. I'll have to dig into that one a little bit more. All right, let's jump to our next question.